$350 to $400
per head.
Jeez. That's what a drought means. You know?
And everyone here's losing money today, aren't they?
Well, they're losing money big time. There's 10 cows there. They're actually being stored. They're being really stored in the dry stores.
90, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Just the last little bit.
And this route's really sending blokes to the wall, isn't it?
It is, yeah, no.
Will Hobbs is a fifth-generation farmer, a father of 3 young children. It's been 2 years since Will last had grass on his property for his sheep and cattle to eat.
So, Will, how much are you spending on feed a day?
$1,000 a day now just for the sheep.
I mean the cattle.
Yeah, and the cattle are equivalent.
So you're spending $2,000 a day
Per day.
on feed.
Just to make sure these sheep's alive. Yeah.
That's borrowed money. He hasn't had an income for nearly 2 years. He's been hand feeding for 7 months. And still, the rain looks like it will never come.
Every day, 7 days a week, you see death, you have to shoot starving stock or kangaroos,
Mate, how do you deal with it?
Well, you got to do it, I suppose.
Just go out and do it. You just can't let it get you down, or...
Yeah, you can't. Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, it does affect people. I mean, you get up bloody middle of the night thinking about what your next day is. I think most people are up at 4:35 and going. You got to deal with it.
Will can't afford to transport his sheep to market because they'll sell for next to nothing.
Not worth it.
Well, the bullet's cheaper, 44 cents.
Cheaper to shoot them.
It's cheaper to shoot the sheep than it is to send them away to market.
So I hope that just gave you a little bit of insight about how dire it is. But I think the important takeaways from that is that farmers want to hold on to their stock. Number one, because they're not worth anything anymore, they're so skinny. But the costs associated with feeding them just absolutely enormous. And you don't know when the rain's going to come, so you're not sure how long you have to feed them for, but you try to hold on to them for so long, because when the drought does break, trying to restock, everyone will be supply demand. Everyone will be in the market trying to buy up sheep, and the prices are just completely through the roof. What's really positive though about times like this is that communities really come together. Other regions around Australia that aren't in such dire circumstances often take on stock for that period, and we've got more pasture for them to feed on. And also a lot of other areas actually transporting hay up to Queensland at the moment to help them, rather than that farmer's spending $2,000 a day feeding the stock, so people are donating hay. So what can the government do about this? Unfortunately, successive generations in Australia have debated drought policy, and it's reviewed, and it's a circular process, and nothing's really worked. In response to the latest drought, our Prime Minister just announced about a drought assistance package worth $320 million. So key components in this package are income support, concessional loans, assistance to build water infrastructure and things, and social and health services as well. It's more an emergency relief, and it conjures up these notions of support, and it's more a short-term brace to get through these really hard times. I believe that in the long term, we need to start thinking about drought in a longer-term frame. Although drought has been a significant part of our history, it's going to become more prevalent with increased severity and frequency as well. So we need to start thinking about drought policy in this context. I hope to work on these issues in the future. They're by no means simple. What to include? Is it subsidies when we've prided ourselves on non-market distorting instruments for so long? Is it sort of adaptation methods or investment in water infrastructure? I'm not quite sure, but we need to start analysing these different policy options. However, the creation of such drought is really tough because it's often left to times when it's like this, and the focus is on crisis management, not risk management. Drought support can also be really highly political, because on the one hand, drought is a natural disaster, and no matter how well you prepare for it, even the best farmer can't often survive it. However, on the other side, there's the rationalist position that it's a business like any other, and why business that's no longer profitable. I don't want to get into that, it's really highly political. But the takeaway to here is that, for me, I think the business of agriculture isn't like any other, and that drought policy needs to be thought of in a broader agricultural lens, as well as the social imperative of providing food and fibre and energy. Because if a farmer moves off this land, who's going to produce the food that came from that land? That's not to say inefficient producers should get assistance, etc. So, thanks for listening, guys. I hope that wasn't too long. Just a couple of key summary points. The scale and sophistication, I think, of our production is really impressive for our small population. We've got a really proud history, but obviously a really challenging future ahead. I see a real future for smallholder producers as opposed to industrialised agriculture. They look after their land and stock in both sustainable and efficient ways. As you were saying, Australia is currently going through a real transition process in order to understand the complexities and how it fits in the global market. So yeah, thank you, and happy to take any questions.
What intrigued you so much with this line of work?
What intrigued me?
Yeah.
I grew up on a farm and I absolutely loved it, and as I said, it's such a part of my family's history. I moved out of it, I went away to school and then to uni in the city, and I started getting more and more consulting jobs that looked at primary industries and climate change and carbon capture and the sustainability of rural communities, and pieces that the government was interested in. And I've always been quite a hard worker, but I've sort of lost focus a lot during my work because I wasn't impassioned and emblazoned by it. And then I started really getting more into it, and that's when I realised that I don't want my family's history to end with me. My brother lives in the city with a small child and his wife, and I don't think he'll end up back there. I don't think I'll be a farmer. I'm not my father in any way. It's a lifestyle, it's a 7-day-a-week job, but I want to see a place and my value where I can add in that supply chain, and it might be at a policy level, which I think it might be, or not an advocacy role, but joining up. So farmers and politicians have a really, not the closest relationship sometimes, and scientists are doing great work, but no one's talking to each other. So the ability to talk plain English and understand different stakeholders' point of view, and then politicise it if it has to be. So that's why
Yeah, interesting.
Do you know if there's been a lot of research for like more drought-tolerant crops going on in Australia?
Yeah, like anywhere at the moment. There's actually some cool work coming out of SFU on drought-tolerant trees and things, for biofuels, which is great. Yeah, a lot. The GMO debate comes up, so it's a really difficult one. We actually export a lot of our agricultural and intellectual capital to places like Africa and things that have the same problems with arable land. Personally, I'm not quite sure the specifics, but there is a lot of investment by government and producers.
It seems like Australia has reasonably unique circumstances in terms of the degree of agriculture relative to the suitability of the land, especially in the drought. Are there any models around the world that you guys could work from, or is the government or the farmers really dictating the path?
Yeah, probably more to your latter point. We're actually, people are looking to us, like Californian governors and stuff, and producers are looking to us and what we do. I'm hoping to work later in the year in India because they have some issues there with drought as well. That's why I'm so interested. There's nothing quite like it, and particularly with climate change, Vancouver will get more and more tracts of farming land that will become less snowy and cold, whereas ours is the opposite effect. So in terms of models out there, I'm not sure, and I really hope Australia, because we've got the capital and the money to invest, hopefully, if we can, or just a lot of land will not be farmed anymore, but what I'm not sure where.
So in areas where it hasn't rained for 2 years, how frequent was the rain before that?
You'd hope to think on average, which is still quite low. In Queensland at the moment, it's probably, we got a big rain about a month ago. It didn't break the drought, but it's got some feet on the ground. They've probably had average rainfall in the years prior to that, and hopefully a bit of impact. It's just so variable, and that's why there's such a contest politically about drought support, because it's like, well, you haven't come for those years, you should have risk managed yourself to get through, and you can, but to get through, is it 2 years to rain, or is it 7? So the weather's an even master.
You brought up risk management. I was actually kind of curious if you know, you having worked with PwC and you probably had some work to do with that. My manager actually is from the Brisbane office for KPMG, and she worked on the Queensland flood.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious if there's any kind of mitigation strategy or any kind of strategy that they have started to put in place for the drought, because it's also a big issue.
Yeah. Flood is a little bit easier to respond to, and I've done a little bit of work on the role of insurance in natural disasters, in terms of making people not build on land that is susceptible to flood.
Yeah.
Drought's a little bit harder, and you can have sea levees and things with rising water. No, there hasn't been the same sort of push with drought at all. There's insurance around crop loss and things, but yeah, like I said, it's really quite uncharted compared to other natural disasters. So sorry, I can't answer that very well. But in terms of after the millennium drought, a lot of measures went in about water consumption and use. We were on water restrictions in the city for years, and every new house now has to have its own water tank that's built under it. So little things like that, but that doesn't cover the systemic problem. Awesome. Thanks. Oh, sorry.
I was wondering what's Australia's current stance on like genetically modified crops, just in terms of like creating resistant or drought resistant crops.
I'll probably answer this really poorly. To be honest, I was aware of them, but I wasn't aware of how strongly the debate was until I came here, and particularly in relation to US agriculture. We don't have a stance, I don't think, on it. I know to the point here that there are modified crops and things, but we don't have, well, I guess like the US in that regard, there's not a mandatory labeling or anything at the moment. I feel a little bit out of touch. I try to keep up to date on the news, but a lot of what I'm learning here is based on North America, so I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. I really appreciate it.
I've got a nice gift for Ellie. It's actually a bottle of BC wine from Mission Hill. Wow. That was amazing, guys. I'll see you guys on Monday. So Laura's going to come talk to us on Monday about the Colombian sugar cartel. Right, so that should be exciting. And you'll get the take-home final as well. Okay.
Oh man, go dude.
I think so.
How's it going?
I have class at 3.